know, but all right, it looks like we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rebirth of Physical and a Culture Reborn 5 years of limited run games with CEO and COO Josh Fairhurst and Douglas Bogart. I hope you've all had a wonderful day. It's been a busy UPLINK, and I first want to say thanks for everyone for being here. We appreciate the folks at UPLINK for organizing this and helping facilitate what I am super excited about. I think it's going to be a great conversation about retro games, indie games, and what limited run's role has been in facilitating physical copies of these titles for all of us to enjoy. I am Jenny Windom. You'll find me online as Kim Chica. I'm not only an indie developer, but I also create video and live stream content around indie games. And I'm joined today by my fellow moderator, Cody. Cody, did you want to briefly introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey, my name is Cody. I'm also known as the Budget Gamer on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, and pretty much in the host and content creator for the channel, reviewing indie games about 2 a week for the last 3 years. So we've covered quite a bit of exclusive indie game content. So sitting here with Josh and Douglas is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and as you can see, we're joined again by Josh and Douglas. If you're familiar with limited run games, you know exactly what they're about, but just in case you're not, they're a publisher for physical games and game-related media for systems like the Switch, the PS4, the Vita, PSVR. I mean, retro consoles, you name it, they have gotten a lot of games out for folks. And they're one of the leaders in physical game preservation, which has not only impacted the retro scene, but really helped amplify and allow players to discover indie games as well, which has been really huge, I know, for me and my enjoyment of indie games. So I wanted to say as well, for folks in the audience, this panel is for you. So if you have questions, we do have eyes in the chat. We'll try to get to them as much as we can. So feel free to ask away if you have anything you'd like to know. Before we jump in, Cody, I wanted to ask you, what have studios like Limited Run meant to you as a gamer and someone who creates content around games?
Oh man, that's a really big question.
Yeah.
First off, when I got back into gaming, I took a bit of a break, when I was going through the university to focus on education. But when I got back into gaming, which was quite a bit later than the childhood I'd started, there was, for the first time in my life ever, the debate of digital or physical. Are digital games worth anything? Is it like just buying the license? Is it like renting a game? Because I knew how the PSN or the PlayStation Network had kind of stopped supporting Vita, which was a system that I really enjoyed, and I felt like I just lost everything. I lost all the support. And so for a company like Limited Run Games to come out and find some of the most iconic indie games I've ever played, personally as a Switch gamer, to have the fact that I could actually own the game that I loved, it was kind of, I don't want to say it was like an emotional thing, but it definitely had an emotional impact on being able to physically collect and own and love the games that I love to experience. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there is something, there is something emotional about having these memories attached to the physical cartridges. I think a lot of us, especially I'm 30 plus, and anyone who has grown up in that age of physical games and cartridges can attach memories to being able to, can attach memories to these games and having the physical thing product there. So what I wanted to start off with Josh and Douglas is, with games and comics, we always think about origin stories. And so I wanted to ask you what your origin story was for Limited Run and how you two came to be and how you two started this company.
Sure, I'll start and then let Douglas, take over a partial. Yeah, I'm getting all tongue-tied here, but I'll let him start, partway through. So I started a game development company back in 2010, Mighty Rabbit Studios. Fresh out of college. I got lucky. There was a group that was funding indie game companies, on ideas alone, which you'll never find nowadays because it's really stupid to do that. It like did not work out for them. None of the companies went on to make any huge hits or anything like that. But right place, right time for me. I had worked at Epic Games while I was in college. I ended up crunching like 90-hour weeks for I think 2.5 months, and it was just absolutely insane to try to balance that with like a full college course load, and I didn't have a life. So it basically put me in a spot where I didn't want to, I was reconsidering my whole career choice. I wanted to work in games, but then after doing that, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do it anymore. But being fresh out of college and having a chance to start my own company, I kind of felt like, I could call my own shots. If I was going to do crunch time, doing it for myself, would be a lot better. But, thankfully we kind of avoided that for the most part, outside of, a few cases here or there where we had a deliverable that we had to do for a client. But after several years of just kind of nose to the grindstone building games, we ended up in a point where we had built games for other people. The one game we built for ourselves, Saturday Morning RPG, it was a critical hit, but it wasn't a big, huge seller, so we didn't make a lot of money. We ended up building other games for other people, Breach and Clear, which did really well for them, but we built this whole game on $100,000. It took us a year and a half to build. We had a team of 8 people, so we were basically getting paid nothing to build it. Game goes on to make like $2 million for our partner that we built it for. They hired us back to do another game for what I thought was a huge budget. It was $400,000. But they asked us to basically implement every feature known to man, online multiplayer, real-time gameplay, turn-based gameplay, procedural dungeons, full loot system, 40-hour story mode. Like, it was everything, laundry list. And we had to do everything to get the funding. And it was just this grueling thing that we had to finish in 11 months. And it came out, and thankfully it wasn't as, bad as it should have been, given the constraints we had and the lack of time. It ended up being about like a high 60, low 70 on Metacritic, which I consider kind of a win, considering we had to build this giant game in 11 months. And it was a nightmare scenario, but that score wasn't good enough. It didn't sell a ton of copies, and we got blamed for it, and our partner kind of abandoned us. No money left, nothing left for us to do. We had very little money left in the bank account, and I had to make a decision. Do I close down? Do I shut down the whole company and move on to something else? Or do I figure out another way to keep things going? And we had just done Breach and Clear for the PlayStation Vita because our partner had kind of thrown that at us like, oh, we don't care about PlayStation Vita. Nobody cares about it. Just go and do that yourself if you want. So we kind of had full control over that. But the thing had only sold like 1,000 copies, or less than that even. It sold like maybe 800 digitally. But I had this idea, like, why don't I take this game and make it physical? Because at least, if we make it physical and we go out of business, at least people will remember us. Because, you got a physical game, it sticks around. There's a legacy. There's, a lasting reminder that that game existed. But if it's never physical, it can disappear into the digital ether. It can go away when the servers shut down and you never see it again. But when you think about it, people talk about bad NES games still because they're physical. They still change hands. People still find out about those games. They still find them at a flea market or whatever. They live on. So I kind of felt like, worst case scenario, we have a physical copy of this game we made. People will remember it. People will know we were here. They'll know we did something. And, the last 5 years at that point would have been worth it because at least there's a legacy. But best case scenario, maybe people want this thing digitally. And I kind of figured, if they want that, we could kind of spin it into a full business model. We could take the knowledge that we learned doing that for our release and then kind of bring it to more developers and publishers who are also kind of hesitant about going physical. And as a collector, somebody who's always loved physical games, always loved physical stuff, it made sense to me. And I felt very strongly that it would do well because it was something that I wanted. And if I could do this for other people, I could get games that I really wanted to see physical. So I could kind of, make some of my own personal dreams come true there. So in order to make this happen, Douglas was, I've known him since 6th grade. We were childhood friends. So I brought him on to help me with Breach and Clear Deadline, which was that kind of crazy game that we built. He came on as a tester for that. I convinced him to quit his full-time job at Best Buy, which he'd had for, I don't know how long, a decade or more at that time, to join us. Or did you join Ubisoft first?
It was technically you, but I was still at Best Buy, and then I was at Ubisoft, so I had 3 jobs, and then you were like, dude, you should really tone those down. And then I quit Best Buy, and then Ubisoft laid me off, and then I was full-time with you.
Yeah, so, he was here testing games, And when the writing was kind of on the wall that, we needed to do something crazy to survive, I took a loan out against my house, against every single thing I owned. And, I used that money to continue paying my team. And I used what little money I had left in the bank account to fund this crazy idea of making Breach and Clear physical. So, if Breach and Clear didn't sell, if it didn't work out, I was going to lose every single thing I had. I was going to lose my house. I was going to lose my car. It would have been really extremely bad if it didn't sell. So Douglas came on and he started marketing it. He kind of, went into communities and, really talked to people one-on-one about, what we were doing and what our goal was. And it really seemed immediate that people wanted this, that they loved the idea. Because the minute that kind of the word got out about what we were doing, like we went from 0 Twitter followers to like 2,000 overnight. And it was like, hey, if even 50% of those people buy Breach and Clear, like we're going to break even. I'm not going to lose my house. So that was kind of a huge relief when that happened. And, after that, we put the game up on sale on October 29th, 2015. And the game sold out in under 2 hours. It was 108 minutes and every single copy sold out. And it was that was the immediate moment where, I knew this was something that people wanted and it was a success. So we started kind of immediately rolling into helping other people do their games.
Mm-hmm. So what happens, No, that was great. I mean, and it's such a really, I think it's so fascinating because you didn't originally go out with the intent of, hey, I'm going to go make physical copies of games and, preserve the history of, video games around the world. But you, through a process, sort of fell into this. When you realized you were at the point of, hey, this is something people want, this is something we can provide, did you have any specific goals that you initially came out with, or did you just say, well, this is working, I guess we'll find another game? How did you decide what your next steps were going to be?
We had other games that we wanted, and me and Douglas kind of sat down and formed a big list of kind of the games that we wanted to sign and wanted to release, and we kind of looked at most of them as pipe dreams, like these are never going to happen. And I reached out to Robert Boyd at Z Boyd Games. I reached out to him I think a couple days before Breach and Clear launched, because I already kind of felt confident that it was going to go well. And we managed to convince him to get on board for Cosmic Star Heroine, which was kind of funny because it was the first, other release we announced, but it took us like 3 years to actually release it. So it was a very long wait for anybody that kind of got on board hoping for that. But, Douglas has, a story about that list. I think at this point, how many of those have we released?
It's like 90% of them. I think there's only a couple that we missed out on, which is kind of crazy because there was things like Transistor on there, which we never thought we'd ever get to work with Supergiant.
Scott Pilgrim.
I never
thought that would happen. That was we looked at that. We were like, no way in hell Ubisoft's ever going to work with us. That's not going to happen. So it's been crazy. It's been nuts. I don't think we specifically had an idea about what the next steps were. It was just I think we can convince some other people to get on board and jump into this. And it ended up being fairly easy, and it was kind of crazy because on day 2, I think Oddworld reached out to us, and we were like, this is a company we grew up playing their games. They reached out. They were frustrated and angry at mainstream publishers. So they had been kind of burned by these big publishers, and they were like, we didn't want to do retail because of that, but you seem like the perfect option for this. So getting to do Oddworld as one of our first releases, that ended up being so legitimizing that we were sitting down with a guy from Epic, for a completely unrelated thing. I think he had invited me to lunch because he wanted my game development studio to start using Unreal Engine. And I mentioned that Oddworld was working with us on a physical release, and he was like, oh, if Oddworld's doing it, we have to. So we ended up getting Epic Games on board for one of our next releases after that, which was, insane. That wouldn't happen this day, because they got Fortnite money, but back then, Fortnite was kind of a flop. So
I was just gonna say, I remember you sent me to PSX that first year, and walking around the show floor trying to tell people like, hey, we're limited run games, and all we had at the time was Breach and Clear, and I'd walk up, this isn't Breach and Clear, but I'd walk up and be like, hey, we can make games like this for you, and they would go, oh, that's not real, like that's bootleg, you couldn't, that's like, I don't believe you. And it was like a really weird thing, but we had a couple early people on like that were pretty interested in us, like Rami from Lambeer was already a fan, and we hit it off pretty well, but it was really weird at first trying to like pitch this to people. But like Josh said, once Oddworld was signed on and announced, it was like the gates just kind of opened.
Mm-hmm. Right, because I mean, after Oddworld, I mean, you've worked with publishers like Sony, and you've done Jack and Dexter, which I remember growing up with, and never thought I'd see another like a physical edition of that game coming back, which was amazing. And you've worked with Sega. I mean, what were some of the sort of the most exciting titles when you were starting to work with these publishers that you were most excited about? More personally.
Douglas, you can go. Douglas, you can go first on this, and then I'll, you tell a story about your most exciting one, and then I'll come up with one for myself.
Oh, I mean, I had pretty weird goals starting out. Like, there were a lot of games on Vita, for example, that I knew weren't physical, like Ray Gigant, Senran and Kagura, Bon Appetit. Those are two I really wanted, and because they were Japanese developers and publishers, I never thought we'd ever get to work with them. But we kind of navigated the waters with Japanese publishers, and I even went to Japan and talked to some of these developers. And I mean, those are two really big ones for me. I mean, obviously now Scott Pilgrim's really huge for me. I don't know, that's like a career-defining game for me, just because like when Josh and I started out, that was the poster child for like what we were doing. So it's kind of hard to top that, to be honest.
Yeah, there have been quite a few games where I've been really excited about them. The game that I was that I have the fondest memories of, that I'm most proud that we actually got to release, was actually Shadow Complex, which was Epic Games. I've mentioned it a few times, I think on Twitter and maybe through some other things. I think I put it in our newsletter, but Shadow Complex was the first time I ever played a digital game and felt like this game needed to be physical. Like, it was just one of these games I was playing. It was so good that I was like, why is this digital only? And I was playing it at a time that was really rough for me. My mom had just died, and it was, this game that kind of took my mind off of it. It was a game that meant a lot to me because it kind of helped me through a hard time. And, knowing that it might not be there one day, it might not be a game that I could ever go back and see again, that was kind of an eye-opener for me about, how kind of reckless it is to kind of have these games exist in a form where they're only digital. Sure, you can kind of go back and bootleg them, but there's a whole hassle to that, modding your system and installing things, and it's like, normal people aren't going to be able to do that. And there are a lot of normal people who are going to play games and then in 30 years want to go back and play them again, and they're not going to be able to because, they're not going to be figuring out how to download these bootleg games and install mod chips and, figure out all this complex stuff to run them. So a lot of these games for normal people, they're just going to be lost. So it was a really special moment for me to be able to release Shadow Complex in a physical format. But, beyond that, there's just been times where it's like, when Douglas called me and said that he met with somebody from Naughty Dog on the floor at PSX and he wanted to do a release with us, I was like, you're joking. Like, there's no way you're actually telling the truth. Like, this is fake. Just who did you really meet with?
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was definitely a case a lot. A lot of times Josh and I would go to each other and be like, you'll never guess who emailed me. And we're just like, why do you keep on pulling my leg or making jokes? Like, I'm sensitive. But that's just what kind of kept happening. It's been really amazing. Like, every time we think we've peaked, like something else happens. Like we never thought we would work. Was insane. Like, Josh and I are mega Star Wars fans. I mean, you can see in his background, he's got the helmet, but we grew up like reenacting scenes from Star Wars at toy stores as kids. So like, for us to be a part of that IP is just insane.
Yeah, that was another one where it was like, they emailed me first. So I think that was the case where Douglas was like, you're joking, right? But my favorite story with that is, they emailed us right around the time when Solo had just come out, and Douglas's response to them emailing me was, man, Solo must have done really bad. Like, they're emailing us to figure out how to make money on Star Wars. But I didn't believe it at first. I didn't think that there was any way that Disney actually wanted to work with us, but it ended up being a serious thing. We met with them at E3 and to a huge back catalog of Star Wars games, which was just absolutely absurd for myself as, a big Star Wars fan, and for Douglas.
So you mentioned, because you had the bucket list that you created, and you said about 90% of the games have been gone through the limited run process. I mean, are there any sort of dream games that if you could get them, through limited run, what would pie in the sky? What would your dreams be?
So my pie in the sky thing is always going to be, if it's a game that already exists digitally, it's going to be Phantasy Star Online 2, as pointless as a physical release of that would be, because it's online only, but it's, my favorite game of all time, Douglas's as well, is Phantasy Star Online. So, anything we could do with Phantasy Star Online would be insane for us. But, my pie in the sky game that doesn't already exist digitally is also Phantasy Star Online, but the first one. If I could bring that to modern platforms with Sega and, release that physically, that's my dream game. I will feel like there's nowhere to go once I've done that. Like, it's all downhill from doing that. So, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but it's certainly, something that I would strive for.
That's awesome. So with those kind of big dream games, like where you've gone and what you hope to do, like limited run games has evolved way more than just producing physical copies of games. It's actually had a huge impact on the fandom. And I know from my channel, we only do indie games. So a lot of the games you covered, we reviewed, and people are like, oh, fingers crossed that this gets a physical. And then like we get the newsletter and it's coming out. And so everyone's just cheering. And then, obviously views go through the roof. So thank you. But more than that, actually producing that physical game has had a massive impact, not just on the fans that were already fans, but on almost legitimizing indie games as a whole. Like, was that something you had ever imagined, either one of you?
So I never really thought that, we would have gotten as big as we have. When we first started this, I don't think Douglas and I thought we were going to do more than like 10 releases, and then everyone was going to be like, oh, this is done. Like, we're good with this. Like, we never thought that, we'd be 500 releases in. Like, we thought, or 700, whatever. I don't know how many. I lost count of how many physical SKUs we've done at this point. It's insane. So, yeah, I remember like walking my dog outside of my old townhouse and just thinking in my head, like, yeah, we're going to do like, here are the 7 releases I can think of in our head that we're going to, be able to do. And after that, that's going to be it. But, it just kept going. We got to release 10 and I was like, okay, I guess this is not a fluke. This actually worked out. And I kept hearing these stories that like, the first release saved my company. We were literally on the brink of going out of business. I actually had a meeting where I sat everybody down and I told them, like, you should find other jobs. Like, I got another job myself. I started teaching at a local community college. So like, it was real. We were going to go out of business, but we didn't because the physical release saved it. And that wasn't unique to me. That was something that was happening with other developers that we were releasing games for. They were able to take the money that they earned from the physical release and fund their next project on it. And in many cases, like some of these small developers we were working with back in the early days, they were selling more through us. They were making more money through us than they were digitally. And that was the same case with me. Breach and Clear made under $10,000 digitally, but, did 3 times that when we sold it physically. So it really made a big impact for the people we were working with. And I think that really meant a lot to these smaller developers. We kind of opened, like, I don't want to feel like I'm like full of myself, but we were kind of the first, approach at, doing a wide scale collection of physical indie releases. And now there's a lot of other people doing it. There's like 15 or 16 other labels, putting out physical releases of indie games. So if you're an indie developer and you release a game, like, physical is accessible, because if it's not through us, it's going to be through one of these other 16 guys. And it kind of unlocked a whole new thread of revenue for these guys, for these developers, to live off of. And that's super important, you know? Like digital was becoming this like extremely ridiculous race to the bottom as an indie developer. Like I was selling my game for like a fraction of a penny sometimes, and it was like we were putting it in Indie Gala, which was like the worst bundle possible back in the day, because they would do like these wacky Wednesday promotions where they're like, you know, buy one bundle, get 6 for free or whatever, and you'd get like you'd pay a penny for it, and you get 6 copies of every game in the bundle, and then they just take them and sell them on like key resale websites. And you know, it was this horrible thing, but that was the only way you could sell your game in some cases, because Steam was so crowded. It was so, you know, it had become so saturated that there was no way to win except to mark your game down to the lowest possible price, or, you know, be in a bundle. So being able to do this thing where you were coming out physically and your game was more expensive than it was digitally, it was like a whole reversal of that race to the bottom. And I felt really proud of that, because I knew I was legitimately helping other developers that were in the same position as me.
Yeah, no, totally. And besides the monetary impact of it, I mean, limited run games has definitely the social and the financial impact, but it's also becoming a brand more in the sense that, kind of like, you know, certain record labels or certain movie companies, if you produce it as limited run games, people just know it's going to be good. There's actually games I've seen in your newsletter that you produced, and I was like, wait, I've never even heard of that. I'm gonna get a copy. So I mean, like that impact of just your name becoming very synonymous with quality, because with thousands and thousands of game going out there on dirty deep sales just to get, you know, a couple pennies, people really don't know what's good sometimes. And with the lack of coverage, when they see limited run producing it, they know it's good. Like, how does that feel to almost be like the new gold standard?
It feels good. You know, again, like I don't want to feel, you know, like full of myself, but you know, we take pride in the games that we pick. You know, early on, especially, we were very focused on, you know, is this a game that we love? Is the game that we like? Do we like the people, or do we like the story behind it? Like, we were very considerate about what we were releasing. Now it's kind of more, you know, we know our audience, so we kind of try to cast a wide net so we can catch everybody. You know, catch as many interests as possible, or, you know, genres, or, you know, game types. We really try to cast a wide net, but still maintain quality, you know, or at least, you know, sometimes we go for games that people don't necessarily consider quality, like Night Trap, but they have this huge cult following around them, and, you know, I personally love them. So it's like, you know, we really do have this personal approach to figuring out what games we want to release. And I love that we've built a fan base up out of it, you know, that we have people who consider themselves limited run fans, because, you know, me and Douglas both come from like a band background, and, you know, none of our bands went anywhere, obviously. That's how 99.9% of bands end up being. But now we kind of have this thing that we can kind of look like as, you know, almost a band that was successful, you know. It's a company, but, you know, we have our own little hats and shirts, and we can wear merch, you know. It's kind of like being in a band. I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch, but
I like it.
But I don't know. I'm proud of it. I like that we've built something that has a brand around it and that has meaning to people. It's been nice.
Yeah, what's really neat is, in addition to games, I mean, limited run, you have like the perfect example. Limited run has expanded to apparel, and not even stuff related directly to like the cartridge of the game, but like boxes of the games, soundtracks, and more. How do you see limited run continuing to grow in the coming years?
I mean, we've already started expanding in a lot of areas. So like, we do a lot more vinyl now, because a lot of our partners have amazing soundtracks, and they're like, hey, I'd love to have this on vinyl. Is this something you can do? And I mean, early on, Josh was a huge vinyl person already, like, or at least starting to be. And then he kind of got me addicted, and now we both have ridiculous collections that just don't stop. And it's one of those things too, like if we're putting these games out physically, we're like, why wouldn't we just do the vinyl? We love this music too, and I think other people would as well. And I mean, we've started doing like, you know, repros of games, like we did the Star Wars collection. I think that's a very good place to work. I mean, we do limited merch here and there in like terms of stuff we can do. We've even started doing some digital stuff because it's kind of like a why not. We have a lot of partners that were struggling to get the promotions that they wanted, like when they're marketing their game by themselves, or they were struggling with the partners they were picking. And we have such, for the most part, I would say, generous deal terms, and we're very transparent and straightforward. We don't have like weird stuff in our contracts. So developers were just coming to us a lot saying like, hey, we'd love to work with you for physical and digital. And just as we've grown as a company, we've started investing in projects too. So like, I mean, we will put money into things because that we want to see made. Like Josh and I are always coming up with like weird ideas at work, and we're like, hey, we have extra money. Why don't we just come up with this new thing we want to do? And we have all these other weird things too that are not announced yet.
Really stupid ones.
Huh?
I said, don't mention some of the really stupid ones. You know,
No. Yeah, no, that one already gets weird reactions. I'll keep that one alone.
Keep it in your back pocket until we actually do it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll be able to gauge the public reaction to it. We got a real stupid idea that we're doing at some point. You know, we're gonna do it. You know, one of the things that I love to do is, you know, if it's something that Douglas or I really want to see happen, we, you know, put our minds together and we figure out how to make it happen. You know, even if it's stupid, it just feels like sometimes even the stupid stuff, like if we want it, there's probably somebody else who wants it, right? Like one of the things we did this year with Scott Pilgrim is we're actually relaunching Prima Games, you know, strategy guides. So like we're bringing strategy guides back, and it's like strategy guides died at retail for a reason because people can just go online and, they've been able to do it for years. Just go to GameFAQs and look at a little like text thing, but YouTube and Twitch and GameFAQs and all these things have kind of come together to make strategy guides kind of pointless. But I still love having a physical book that I can flip through, especially for, big RPG. Like, what am I going to do when the next like Elder Scrolls comes out and I can't have, like some 7,000 page strategy guide in my lap the whole time? Like, it's just, it's a void that needs filling. So that's kind of, one of the areas where we're kind of going to expand more into is strategy guides. And also, from a company perspective, we've been building some actual technology in-house to easily help our partners bring back their like retro titles to modern platforms. So, it's an emulation engine, but it's easy. So like the developers or publishers don't have to pay anything to like make it happen. Like, we'll develop it, we'll do the port, we'll do all of the work so that we can help them re-release these games, and then we can do the physical release. Like, the physical release gives us, that's where we can make our time and money back and our investment back. And we're kind of killing two birds with one stone because we get to do the physical release and we get to like further preserve this game and get it out on new formats for more people to enjoy. So that's kind of a big focus this year. I created a list of like, I don't know, like 500 retro titles that I would like to license and, get back to Switch and PS5 and Xbox and PC. So that's kind of a big focus for us.
That's really exciting to hear. And yeah, we've got someone who said sometimes with those strategy guides, you get incredible artwork with it that makes them worth purchasing. So it's not even just about looking up the information. Again, like with cartridges, there's something tangible and emotional about having that there with you as you play, that you get to experience and have even after that experience of playing the game is done. I think the idea of the community, you mentioned sort of a band and the community and your fan base really growing through creating these the physical editions of these games. And I'm really curious, especially, with the current situation of people being at home now more often, exploring games. A lot of folks either are new or returning after a long time. Consoles like the Switch make games very approachable for a lot of people. Have you seen shifts in the people who are looking at physical games and engaging with physical games merchandise?
So, when I started this company, I thought that all of our customers were going to be like, 30 to 50. Like, I thought they were all going to be like, people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that was going to be it. But the weird thing has actually been that our analytics shows that like a huge portion of our audience is actually like 18. Like, I never would have expected like people who grew up in the digital era to like care about physical things. But the thing that I noticed is that a lot of these younger people are actually watching like people on YouTube like Metal Jesus Rocks and other like classic gaming YouTube people, and they're looking at these collections and they're saying like, I want those games, like I want to collect games. And they're realizing the value and importance of physical games. Like, they're kind of coming to this, and a lot of people always talk about there being like a retro game bubble, but I don't think it's a bubble. I think it's like legitimate demand. Like, I think a lot of young people are getting into collecting retro games. They're not going to get out. And then you have this fixed quantity of retro games that exists. Like, they were made for like the generation that was buying them new at the store. And like, that's not enough supply to also include people that didn't exist when they were made, right? So like, prices are getting driven up by actual demand, like people getting into retro games. And those same people are also buying from us because they understand that, 30 years from now, their favorite games might not be playable anymore if they don't have them on a cartridge or a disc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we
So
were in a panel earlier.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
The delay is killing us. You go ahead first, since I asked the last one.
All right, so I have a question. Limited Run, I mean, obviously it's taken the digital into the physical, but you've also done that with your business. I mean, you were a digital online store, and now you have a store. I mean, it's a blank canvas, as we were talking about before the panel started. But what are the plans for a company to have that storefront? Like, what do you have a dream for what you actually want to do? Is there going to be something special or something different for your actual physical location?
So I was just say what year is it now? 2021. In 2019, we did a pop-up shop at our local mall that's dilapidated and is now being purchased by Epic Games for their new place. And the pop-up shop was really awesome because, I mean, it was a chance for Josh and I to have like a store in a place we grew up in. And, it was really neat, and it was the most action that mall had seen in over a decade. And there was just so many people there. And I feel like that really, because when we were younger, I mean, Josh has always wanted a store. I mean, he used to sell games all the time, and he's just been a big collector since I've known him. And I think the pop-up shop being successful really pushed him into this new idea of like, hey, let's do a retail store. Because we had our people at work, like, hey, look into real estate around here and find us a place. And we found one in this other, what used to be dilapidated shopping center that's now being renovated. And there was like this spot that, granted the spot we picked out looked like maybe a meth lab was there, but it looks better. It will look better. Like you said, it's a blank canvas. And yeah, I'll let Josh go now because I think he can explain what his vision was.
And the spot, as rough as it looks, it's right next to like a board game bar. So it's like, it's immediately located next to some place that people can go like after they go in our store. So it's kind of like, if somebody's going to drive like 3 hours to our store, it's nice that they have a place they can go in, get some food, like play some board games, drink some beer, whatever they want to do. And there's also like a hotel right next door to the shopping center. So it's like, if we do a big event, we can have, we'll come in and they can actually, stay at the hotel right by the store. So it kind of ended up being this like almost one-stop location for it, almost like a mall, I guess, but, not a mall. That shopping center is, 40 years old. It's most famous for being in a Doritos commercial during the Super Bowl 10 years ago. And I couldn't really describe that at all. It's not a, notable, memorable commercial at all. But the shop itself is going to be really cool. So I've wanted to own a game store for a really long time. And this is kind of me doing another, wish fulfillment thing. As stupid as it sounds to every sane person right now, where they're like, you're going to open a store during a pandemic. Like, we're not going to open it during the pandemic. We're waiting till it's safe. But still, to sign a legal store during the pandemic, to like most sane people, that's crazy. But, I see an opportunity. I think that our fan base, our audience, they love physical retail locations. Like, that's a thing. They like game stores. Game stores are dying. I like game stores. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, it checks a lot of boxes for me. So we're going to kind of build this store. We're going to put a lot of money into theming it. So it's going to look like a 90s game store, like a 90s shopping mall, like very heavy with neon, bright colors, like crazy carpet, like neon acrylic shelving. Like I even want like the checkout POS. Like I know this isn't 90s, but I want it to be a 2000s iMac. You know, those candy color ones. Like as much as the store clerks will hate me for making them use like a 2000s iMac to like check people out on, like I feel like from a theming perspective, like it's just perfect. It would make that store like this really cool time capsule. Like I want people to walk in there and feel like they're somewhere special, remembering their childhood to some degree, because that's just a good feeling, you know, just a good feeling to go into a place like that. But overall, you know,
there's a lot
the
of
goal for this to be a gathering point for fans. We're going to have monthly events there where we have game creators come and, you know, talk about their games and sign games. We're going to have hopefully some bands at some point play there, because there's a little like stage on the lower floor of the shopping center. So that's kind of a goal for me. And then, you know, we're going to do monthly events where we sell off kind of customer returns, damaged items, things like that, because those things really build up in our warehouse and they just waste space. So this is a nice way to sell them off. We did that at our pop-up store, and we sold those things real cheap and people loved it. So yeah, it's going to be a nice thing to have, I think, for fans and for us to be able to interact with people that, you know, it's nice to get to interact with people in person that buy our products, because, you know, you end up getting a lot of like nice feedback that way, you know, constructive criticism, things like that. But it's like, it's so much better when you're getting that like face to face, and you can have this kind of back and forth rather than, you know, people, you know, just kind of yelling things into the void of the internet. Like it's more personal and it just feels a lot better. Like I loved our pop-up shop. It was a great experience. You know, even if people were critical, it was like, it was great to be able to get that criticism like face to face. So, you know, you can kind of have an actual conversation about it.
Yeah, I think there's something really wonderful. I mean, again, maybe it's also because I've been at home for the last year, but you know, this idea that gaming isn't just about playing the game. It's about the community that you create and the stories that you share with other players of that game, the experiences that you can share with one another. The fact that the shop that you're creating is more than just, hey, I'm going to go in and buy the game and leave. It's an experience. It's a place that you hope to cultivate folks who can appreciate and like enjoy this aspect of gaming culture. I think that's really cool. One thing that brings to mind, because I mean, with one shop, it kind of begs the question of how big would you love to see Limited Run get? You know, are you hoping to stay, you know, based, is it North Carolina that you're based in?
Yep.
Are you hoping to stay central to North Carolina, keep it in the US, keep it really, you know, be able to sort of have your hands on everything? Because right now it's probably at the point where both of you are doing a lot of that curation and that work, but are you hoping to see it expand further? We've got folks asking if you are accepting interns. So where do you hope to see that go in the future?
I mean, we already have a limited run Japan office now, which is really cool. And we've been investigating a European one, but with the pandemic, that part kind of slowed down because we really need someone physically there. And with Japan, we actually had an employee there. So that kind of worked out. And if the store does well, I mean, we've always talked about it'd be cool to have one on the West Coast, like maybe in LA or like Seattle, somewhere on the West Coast. Probably LA would be best. And then, yeah, I mean, we just kind of keep growing. It's insane.
It's really crowded. You know, I was actually pushing for San Francisco, even though, you know, not in San Francisco, because that would be absurd. You know, that would be like, I don't even know, it would be like what $50,000 a month for the lease or whatever. No. But like, you know, Oakland, Concord, I don't know, one of the surrounding places, you know, where it may be a little bit more reasonable, because the Bay Area just has like no game stores. There's one. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, there's only like the one.
To have
right?
such a populous area that has just Phoenix Games and Concord. So it's like they've got one store and it's this huge metropolitan area. It's like they could deal with more. LA's got like 25 video game stores. It's not even fair. I wish I lived in LA so I could go to, well, I don't wish I lived in LA right now during the pandemic, but you know, any other time of you know, my life, I would love to be in LA where they have all those game stores. I wish I had that many game stores here.
Yeah, that's the best part of E3 is riding the scooters to all those stores.
Yep.
So we're getting close to the tail end. I wanted to ask Josh and Douglas if you had any last things about just sort of this journey you've taken on growing Limited Run, anything you wanted to share with folks who are listening in right now?
I don't know if I have any kind of last thoughts on it. I think we're just going to keep, I feel like, I just keep following, my gut feeling on things that I want, things that I think are cool, and things that, other people in the company think are cool. And it tends to just, have led us in the right direction. So I feel like we're just going to keep following our gut and following what feels right, what's cool, and, what we want to do personally. And I think we're just going to keep growing. I think we've got some really big releases coming up. Douglas is super stoked for our next release. I'm stoked for it too, but it's like a personal favorite of his. So, I guess, the March 12th releases, Yeah, we have some Switch stuff coming up that is going to be, I think, a big deal for a lot of people. And we just have a lot of cool stuff planned. It's just exciting to be a part of this and get to work on so many crazy games, like getting to work with Electronic Arts, Disney, Ubisoft, Bethesda. Like, it's insane. Like almost nobody else in the industry gets to like work on a Doom thing and work on a Star Wars thing and work on a Scott Pilgrim. Like we just get to keep doing cool stuff. It's insane that we've worked with so many different IP, that we've worked with so many different games. It's insane. I can't believe that I'm in the position that I'm in. It's wild.
Yeah, I feel like one of the cool things about our company that we've been able to do is because we really established trust with our partners, especially recently, a lot of them have just been like, what would you like to do? And we'll say the craziest stuff, and they're like, let's make it happen. And it's like,
That's awesome.
there never seems like to be like there's going to be an end in sight for us, because like literally we're meeting more and more people that are like us, and they're just excited, and everybody's like, hell yeah, let's do this, because you've already proven that it's a thing. And it's, I don't know, it's just really awesome, like meeting all these like-minded people within the industry that are just wanting to do cool stuff now, and they're not as worried about like, oh, what is the board going to think? They're just like, you know what, screw it, let's do it. And I feel like that's where we really excel, is like being able to do these passion projects.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone in their right mind would have done Chex Quest, but here we are. $150 Chex Quest box. It happened.
Oh man, I've got a question actually. I took the liberty of polling some of my fans and viewers for something, and one of them that came up is, as doors are being flung open for limited run games as a company, and moving forward, you've already said you've accomplished some of your major milestone games. If you could bring back any game from any console and make a physical for any system, what would it probably be?
So outside of the Phantasy Star Online one that I mentioned, because that, that's the pinnacle for me. I think the other one that I would love to do would be probably, either, I mean, it's really hard for me because it's something from the Dreamcast, and I love the Dreamcast, so it's hard for me to like pick my favorite there. But I would want to do either Skies of Arcadia or Jet Set Radio, like one of those two. If I could pick either of those two, that's where I would land. But I don't know if we'll ever be able to get the opportunity to do those games. I hope so. And I said that 5 years ago I was saying we'd never get to do Scott Pilgrim. So who knows? In 10 years, maybe every publisher out there is just like, hey, do whatever you want with our stuff. Have fun. Like, I'm hoping we get to that point.
Josh, the correct answer was, who did I date last night?
Oh no, we're not going to bring that game back. Same with Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
Yeah, something.
That's not my choice there.
Oh, great answers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
I also, Jet Set Radio is what got me as well. That'd be so awesome.
That was my first PlayStation game ever.
It would make an amazing like collector's edition, that just lends itself so well to physical items.
Mm-hmm.
So good. You put
I
out
wanted
CE with the headphones.
Mm-hmm. Beats headphones.
Spray paint.
It shoots spray paint at you when you open it up. That's where Douglas is gonna go.
So good.
Douglas' main thing every time we're brainstorming a new collector's edition, Douglas's first suggestion is it shoots something at you and the box opens. Doesn't matter what it is, Windjammers is going to shoot sand at you. Golf Story is going to shoot goose feathers at you. What was the other one? Snakes with llama llama.
Yep, snakes. And then it transferred to Spelunky as well, but
Nobody bid on either of those ideas. I feel like we were pitching there's another developer that was finally like, yeah, that sounds great, but they said make it like shards of glass. I was like, take the liability there.
I remember you do a disco game and just have glitter.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would just glitter bomb everybody.
General Mills was down with the checks idea if it shot out checks, but we couldn't just do food.
Yeah, we couldn't ship food. That's the problem. We have enough Chex Mix. We have 2 pallets full of Chex Mix in our warehouse now, because we actually handled we did the press kits for Chex Quest, and they had us make. I don't remember how many influencer kits they made. I think it was like 100, and each one of them was supposed to come with like 4 or 5 bags of Chex Mix, and they only had to send out like 20. So we have 400 bags of Chex Mix just sitting around in our warehouse now, and like we haven't touched it because we didn't know if they were suddenly going to be like, now you got to send out the other 80 or whatever. But it's getting to the point where they're almost expired, so I don't think they're ever going to. So I got to figure out what to do with 400 bags of Chex Mix. I think we're going to donate it to a food bank. I think that's the sensible thing to do, especially during the pandemic. That's like the responsible thing to do. But I hope they find people to eat 400 bags of Chex Mix. Not exactly we do abstinence either, but I guess.
We do a Twitch video, and it's you and me, and we sit down and try to eat the whole thing in one sitting.
Challenge.
Yeah, celebratory stream of some sort.
What a waste.
We did get one question. Let me scroll up. So folks were asking about announcements. When digital E3 happens, it's often June, so that's a little bit early. But if folks wanted to hear announcements from you all, where should they sign up or look just to make sure they stay in the loop?
The newsletter at the bottom of our website is kind of, if you're not a Twitter person, the newsletter is the most easy way to stay up to date with us. But other than that, our Twitter is kind of our most active spot. Our marketing team, they're very focused on Twitter, because it's where we have our biggest following. So announcements always go out first there, and then they go out to Facebook or Instagram. So like Twitter is kind of the big place. But the newsletter, you're going to get an email when games go on sale. You're going to get an email the day before they go on sale. So the newsletter will give you pretty ample heads up when things are going on sale. So it's hard to miss things. And because of the pandemic, we've really been moving towards a lot of open pre-orders rather than doing hard limits. We used to be very focused on hard limits because in our early days that was necessary to get people excited about games they'd never heard of. That was the only way to really get them excited about something like Breach and Clear, this game that very few people had bought. It needed an angle to sell it. But as we've grown and as the games we've signed have gotten bigger, we've realized that the limits really hinder us. So we moved to doing these open pre-orders. Every time we do a popular game like Night Trap on PlayStation, we'd end up with like 4,000 people that missed it. And then they hate us. And 3 years down the road from Night Trap, like people still hate us for Night Trap. It's insane. Like people who miss Night Trap still say like Limited Run sucks. Like they don't realize that we've moved to open pre-orders on most of the stuff that, outside of very few instances where the developers are like adamant that it's still got to be limited for whatever reason, like we're pretty much fully embracing open pre-orders. Or if it's still a really, a smaller game where we feel like the limit is necessary to kind of drive the interest or enthusiasm, like we still have to do it there. But we certainly don't rely on arbitrary limitations anymore. Like that's not our crux. Like our main goal is to make cool physical games and get them out to as many people as we possibly can.
Awesome.
So question about that, if you don't mind, is that the reason that you kind of went more toward the exclusive cover when you signed with like the Best Buy deal?
Yeah, so I mean the reason that we did that is because we wanted people who bought from our site to still feel like they got something special. They've got to wait for the manufacturing to happen. They've got to wait for the shipping. And like, they're putting a lot more time into it than, somebody who's just walking in and grabbing it off the shelf at Best Buy. So we wanted to make sure that, the release that they had to pre-order and wait for, it maintained that special sense to it. It has a cover that is exclusive to that. But if you go to Best Buy, you get something different. So it kind of keeps them, unique and, still feeling like it was a special thing to order it from our website. And the things at Best Buy are actually, they're actually still hard limited. So Best Buy can't reorder. So when they sell out of a game, that's it, And they've undergauged some things recently, like Shantae and the Seven Sirens for Switch, like sold out like in a day. It was insane. I was like,
oh yeah.
I don't know, guys. I don't know what was going on. They placed a really low order for that. So, I think we've been more cognizant recently about saying like, hey, you might want to go in higher on that. Like Scott Pilgrim, they were going to get like 3,000 copies of them. And you're like, that's gotta you gotta go up on that. That's not going to last.
That is one of the few that I got the big CE for. I was so excited when I saw it. I was like, no way! Lights and sounds and it's a stage. Oh man, that one made my day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So that is it for us today. Thank you so much to everyone who listened in, who joined us. Again, sign up for their newsletter, visit Limited Run's website. Let's support them, and eventually we'll be able to visit their physical shop and celebrate and listen to the music and all have a really good time. Cody, before we head off, could you remind folks where they can find you and what you do and what you're up to?
Yeah, hey, one more time, I'm known as the Budget Gamer, Cody D's, and you can find me on YouTube on the Budget Gamer channel, as well as Instagram and Twitter as @BudgetGamerChan. It's a channel that is 100% exclusively devoted to indie and third-party games, so you won't find even a single A or AAA title. Putting out 2 reviews a week, just critical and in-depth. I don't score games, I don't rate them. I pretty much just give you enough information to make your own decision if it's the game for you. So if you're looking for some critical, in-depth kind of introspection on indie games, more as an art form and as an experience, that is what the Budget Gamer channel is all about.
Awesome. Josh and Douglas, do you have like Twitter handles you wanted to shout out or anything you wanted to sort of promote before we head out?
So next week we have Curse of the Moon 2, Bloodstained, going on sale on our site on Friday. So that's going to go up for pre-order. That's an amazing game from the team at Inti Creates. Inti Creates, if you're not familiar with them, they made Azure Striker Gunvolt. They made a lot of really great games, high quality action games, and Curse of the Moon 2 is a very, very old school Castlevania-like game. It's very close to like Castlevania 3. And it's super well done, super good. So make sure to grab a copy. The first Curse of the Moon ended up, being one of our games that's really hard to find now, but it was sold as an open pre-order. So, don't miss out on it because the prices tend to rise after the pre-orders. So, show up, get it cheap from us, and, enjoy the game because it's really, really good.
Yeah, Douglas.
So check out Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2 if you don't know who Inti Creates is. They're a company that did things like Azure. No, I'm just playing. I was just going to repeat everything he said. But yeah, like he said, Bloodstained's coming up. It's a big one. One of my favorites. I love the guys at Inti Creates. They've done a lot of great work, and I'm really excited that we get to do the sequel. And then if people want to follow me, they can follow me at Limited Run Doug on Twitter. And then they can follow, the main account, which is at Limited Run Games as well. Since Josh didn't say it, I'll say his forum at Limited Run Josh. And yeah, we just really love our fans and want you to keep showing up for all the games we got.
Awesome. And to close out, my name is Jenny. You can find me online as Kimchika, on Twitter as Kimchika. I also, like Cody, create content centered around indie games, also looking at them from a more thoughtful perspective in analyzing their narrative and really just enjoying them for what they are. So you can find me on YouTube and Twitch under the handle Kimchika. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone who stayed up late with us, who joined us for this discussion. I hope you all have a great Saturday evening, and we'll see you later. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.